Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Hey guys, Dustin Nguyen.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, the Batman and DC podcast with no limits. This week we are joined by Grandpa Batman in Texas.
Howdy.
The Bat Force Times in New York.
Hello, hello.
And I'm Robin Cross in Canada. Okay, the contributions of a colorist are one of the most often overlooked aspects of any comic book. How often do you see references to a comic citing only the author and penciler in the credits? But there are many colorists whose work has such a massive impact on every panel and cover that they work on, that their colors are just as immediately recognizable and unmistakable as any of the most celebrated pencilers. This week's guest is one of the best in the industry, known for enhancing the work of names like Gary Frank and Jason Fabok in two of the best-selling comics in recent history, Doomsday Clock and Batman 3 Jokers, in addition to hundreds of other titles, all the way from right up here in the Great White North. Welcome, Brad Anderson.
Woo! Yes.
Hey, yeah. Thanks so much. That was awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us. We've wanted to do this for a while. Yeah, but just based on the two books that I just mentioned, you've done a ton of others, but just based on those two, that tells people how much of your work they see these days.
Right.
You're a very busy guy. Just for anyone who doesn't read the names of the artists on books, aside from those, you've been on Geoff Johns and Jason Fabok's Justice League run with Darkseid War and all that stuff.
Right.
The Batman Earth 1 stuff that Geoff Johns was writing, Gary Frank was drawing. It really seems like those guys in particular don't want to work with anyone but you.
No, which is quite the honor for me, and I'm very fortunate to have those guys. Well, when we first started Doomsday Clock, I said, "Oh man, thanks for having me on." He's like, "Well, we didn't have a list. You were the only guy that we wanted." So I was like, "Well, awesome." But yeah, and same with DK3 too. Worked on that, which was a huge honor for me. But yeah, I've been fortunate to be pretty busy, so it's good, I guess.
Yeah, I like that having you work on both, being that Doomsday Clock and Three Jokers are such massive event books that were taking place so close to each other. It was nice having your color bring a consistency between the two that almost makes them feel connected. You feel like you're reading almost the same book.
Yeah, I don't know if that has something to do with the story, maybe. The darkness of it and how Doomsday Clock started. It was, I wanted to. That's a whole story on its own. But as far as the Watchmen universe, having to keep that kind of color scheme, and then moving into the DC universe, and then moving into Fabok's Three Jokers stuff, which is that gritty, Gotham City kind of look. I don't know. I kind of approach it the same way, almost like a movie, keeping the key colors in the characters and then the main lighting surrounding. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it was kind of, like a similar type feel, but I was just kind of doing my thing, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things that Jay was talking about the last time he was on the show, just maybe 2-3 weeks ago,
Right.
was why he likes you so much for coloring and doesn't want to use anyone else is your understanding of lighting and how you'll use multiple points of lighting in your colors, where he thinks a lot of other, even great colorists would really simplify things down and you wouldn't see the lighting and the dimensions that you use.
Yeah, I mean, Jay is like the best, right? Like he's such a good guy. He's been so awesome to me. When we first started, he used to have, like, I think it was the first Batman we worked on, and I didn't know him at all, and we started this project, and I had the script, and then the editor's, okay, well, Jason's got some color notes for you. So I opened the file that he had, and it was like per page, per panel, exactly what he wanted. Like, he's so passionate about, the look he wants, and he knows the exact look he wants. And I never worked with him before at the time. And he just gave me all these notes, and I was like, oh my God, like I don't have time to go through all these, like I got a deadline. I got to crank out 3 to 4 pages a day to try to meet this deadline. And I have to go through his notes. So he's basically, the first paragraph was, I want it to look like a movie. I want this and that. And I'm like, hey, perfect. And I read the first part of the notes. I didn't read the rest of them. And I kind of did the first few pages and I sent it to him. And he was like, yes, it's exactly what I want. And then he never sent any notes after that. Like, it was kind of like, I could kind of read his mind. Like, as soon as he said he wanted to look like a movie, then I was like, oh, okay, that's perfect. Cause I'm a huge movie buff, and like, I watch movies just for the lighting and the color and that kind of stuff. And and Jay, like, he draws like perfect scenes for that kind of stuff. And I wish more artists would leave like an edge light or a rim light, because then it almost separates planes for me on its own. Like, Batman in the foreground, it's pouring rain, you got stuff going on in the background, and if it fades to black on one side of Batman, then I have to kind of do an extra effort into separating the background. Maybe I might put some mist in there, some lighting, and I'll cut him out of it. But Jay will just add that kind of a rim light, so I could play off with a secondary side light. Maybe there's a street light or a cop car. It might be, for instance, in I think the issue of Three Jokers where Commissioner Gordon, where I think that's in the right issue. Yeah, where there's cop cars outside one of the buildings, and there's cop cars out. So there's the blue light, and then next panel I put red light, next panel blue light. So I could have the foreground guy bathe in blue light while the background's all red, just kind of emphasizing that the lights are flashing. So yeah, like Jay does that off. He always leaves that little bit of extra for me, which is super nice. But so I love that about him.
Yeah, it's one of the ways that you guys work so well together. I want to rewind a bit. I would love to get sort of your origin story, like your inspirations to get into art. Like, what was that thing that made you know that this was what you wanted to get into?
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I'm from a small town in Ontario. Right, where Lake of the Woods? It's right on kind of the Manitoba border.
Okay.
Born and raised there. It's like a lake town. There's a paper mill there, so I worked at the paper mill right after high school, and I've always drawn and everything. So I actually went to the Kubert School, kind of packed up, loaded up my truck, quit the mill, and I drove down to New Jersey, and I lived there for a few years. Went to the Kubert School, won a partial scholarship my second year, and I think our first year, I shared a house with like Damien Scott, Spider-Man, and Batgirl, and awesome dude. And so then once I was there, I got to know Jesse Delperdang. He was inking X-Men at the time. with Andy Kubert's X-Men run.
Mm-hmm.
So he was living at our house. I guess he was in between houses, his rental places. So he was living at our place. So I got to see, he's actually inking X-Men in our living room at this drawing table, and which is pretty awesome. So so when from there I moved back to Canada, and then I started working at this place called Digital Chameleon. They did a whole bunch of most of the coloring books was coming out of Winnipeg at the time, from like all the X-Men books, like Heavy Metal magazine, like Penthouse magazine, all like almost everything was coming out of Winnipeg at the time. So they had a shift. They would run a 24-hour shift of color separation. And I started working there, and I was doing color with you use markers. They would photocopy a whole issue, and they would do like let's say Kazar at the time. So they would photocopy an entire issue Kazar. They'd hand out scenes, and we would color them by marker, and we put the color code, the CMYK code on it, and we'd hand that to the separating floor. And there was 24-hour color separation. They would follow our codes, and they would digitally separate it and send them off. That's basically where I started.
So you went to the Kubert School specifically for coloring. You didn't want to do, pencils or ink or.
Yeah, I went for illustration, and I actually wanted to be a storyboard artist for movies.
Okay.
That's I thought that was pretty cool, and it was one of my, kind of goals. But we got into we had to learn, painting and, the computer, portion of it, learning Photoshop, and we had to do, all kinds of stuff, narrative art and inking classes. Everything. It was basically the school would teach you how to make a living at commercial art, which was really good. Had a lot of really good guys there, and so I got to do acrylic painting and all that. So I use the same kind of principles that I would use if I was using acrylic paints, for instance, in my approach to coloring right now. So I'll still use kind of almost brush strokes in some of the stuff I do too. Like if I do a face or something, I'll add kind of a little, almost like a organic texture to it. But I basically just use one brush as I'm doing color work for books.
Wow, very cool.
So
I'm really old school. So
was there a first comic or anything that you picked up that inspired you to follow that road, or was it mostly just from the desire to be a storyboard artist that led you to that?
Well, no, I was always a huge comic book art fan. Like I loved the art. So, I mean, the town I grew up in, there wasn't a comic book shop or anything. There was, I had to go to the spinner rack at the grocery store, at the drugstore, and it's super limited what I could get. So I would just kind of grab the cool art, like the cool covers, cool Hulk covers and Buscema, Conan stuff. I used to copy muscles, and I used to draw all that kind of stuff all the time, just nonstop. When I was, just sitting at home as a youngster, I'd be constantly drawing. And my older brother, he had some of those heavy metal magazines, which I got to see some, European art. Like it just blew my mind. And then I heard about the Kubert School as I got a little bit older, and I thought, oh man, it'd be nice to try to, wonder if I could do something with that. So yeah, but I would always draw that kind of stuff. Like I would draw from comics. Like I would learn how to draw feet from, comic books and that kind of stuff. And yeah, but.
So what was your first comic assignment, and what did it feel like the first time you saw that published in hand and you had, a copy for yourself?
Oh man, yeah, it was pretty neat. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like to get paid. I got a bunch of stuff in my office wall, like my first kind of projects. I think the very first project I got paid for was a gig for it was for a Star Wars magazine. I was working with Jan Drusema on this is before Star Wars Legacy stuff, which it's like 100 years ago. It feels like. Yeah, I think it was Star Wars Insider magazine or something. So there was an article in there, so I got to do the color for the article. And she just sent me the pencils for these panels, and I painted over her pencils. And I kind of cut it out and pieced it together and framed it in my office as my kind of first, how you frame your first dollar that a restaurant would make? Well, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, and then I got to do, oh man, I've done lots. Yeah, I got to do I started work at Peter Woods on Catwoman. And then right from there, it's just taken off. I've been super fortunate. I've been busy like ever since. So yeah, there's been months, maybe where you don't take a day. I don't take a day off in 2 or 3 months sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Well, I'm just a laborer, so you know how it is.
It's very Canadian that you were working in a mill, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's such a Canadian thing to have in your history.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Well, the thing is, the mill's no longer there anymore. They actually tore it down and everything else. So yeah, it worked out good for me.
There you go.
Yeah.
With so much crossover these days between comics and movies, not only with so much of film and television coming from comics, but also the crossover of creators. Like we have guys that have been directors for years coming over and writing comic books. Like last year, or maybe it was this year. I don't remember. This year feels so long. John Carpenter wrote that Joker story. There's all this crossover between the two mediums. Maybe we'll still see that day where you'll do some storyboarding for a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I always still do illustration now for commission work. I illustrated a coin for the Canadian Mint.
Yeah,
I did a Normandy coin. Yeah, so you never know. Like I'm not much of I would need someone to write something and I could do it, but yeah. But I've done a little bit of narrative art. I just love it. But I mean, I've been doing the color work for so long. For me to make a living, like I know exactly how long it takes me to do stuff. The artists know exactly what they're going to get when, editors, they've worked me for years. So it's not like I'm unpredictable for deadlines and that kind of thing. So it's just, I mean, I don't know. It's good for work wise, for business wise. Just to be part of the team, it just makes everything go smooth. So I know what I'm getting when I'm working for Gary Frank and Jeff or Jay or whomever, and we have the editors, and it's such a comfortable situation. Like, yeah, it's so easy. It's a nice work environment to be in. So I don't know. I try to plug away and keep at it.
And it's nice that I don't know how much you hear of it, but when we're speaking to people that you work with so much, the appreciation for how above expected levels you perform, we hear how much they appreciate the job you're doing. So that's going to be pretty rewarding to get the praise that you do from the people that you work with is pretty great.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's not just from like nobodies, it's from, top guys. Like it's pretty cool. It's pretty nice to hear. And I don't want to screw up their art. Like Gary sends me scans of his page, and he basically draws from ink, right? He puts his landmarks in, as he says, and then he starts drawing with ink. So when I get the pages, they're pretty there's lots of like some scribbles, and there's a lot of stuff to clean up. So I get to go over his pages, like zoomed in, and I get to clean up, and it's it's almost a shame to color them. I always tell him, I says, you should just print these black and white because they're so gorgeous. And he just laughs. But he's a master. Those guys, and Lee Weeks too. Oh my God, like,
oh yeah,
I've been a Lee Weeks fan since since before I went to the Kubert school. Well, I guess when I went there, and I got to Andy and Adam was in the basement at the time, and I got to go down there because we were friends with Jesse, and he was inking Andy stuff. So I kind of tag along and sneak in there, and he had I think Lee was working on Alien Predator at the time. So I still have them in my basement. I got a box full of full-page photocopies of his actual inks, like finished pages. And I used to just stare at them and go like, oh my God, like, how do you even get to this level? Like, it's unbelievable. So I've been a fan of his for forever. And then I get an email from him one day and it says, oh, looks like you're going to be working on I can't remember what I first did. I did a cover for him. I can't remember what it was. And this before we did Lois and Clark. We did a few issues of that. And I was like, oh my God, like you are like my favorite. I didn't even know what to say. I was totally,
You're like fanboying.
Oh my God, I was totally geeking out. Oh, it's hilarious. But so now like we're, he's a good friend and we're at conventions and we'll, have lunch and dinner together and that kind of thing. And he's such a good guy. And I just like, do you even know who you are? Like, it's crazy. Yeah, good guys. And Andy Kubert's been so awesome. Like, he's a big supporter of mine, and he just loves what I do with his stuff. And he basically just says, he'll send me a cover or something. I says, oh, is there anything specific? Is it? Oh no, just do your thing. So I'll do it. And he just, he'll send an email back, and this is perfect. And a couple little tweaks here and there, but otherwise I've been pretty fortunate.
So do you have I don't know. And right now I'm in my hand. I'm looking at both the Earth 1, Volume 1 and Volume 2. When you go into a project like that, do you have a set palette or do they give you a set palette of colors that they want the book in, or do they just leave it up to you to go?
Pretty much. Actually, I'm working on Volume 3 right now.
Oh, show us a preview.
I was going to ask if that was the case.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not. Does anyone? Anyway, so I'm kind of plugging away at it now. There's so many pages. No, there's no, I literally have to ask Gary if there's something specific. Like, okay, he's like, no, no, just do what you want, kind of thing, almost. But yeah, I mean, I get the full scripts. So I always read the script and I go through, and any questions, I banter back and forth with Gary and Geoff, and same with Jay too. I'll just send Jay an email or something, and but otherwise, I kind of do what I want, and then if there's any specific changes, I'll just change them after. But it's pretty. I just kind of follow the script and do what I think looks cool, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
How did you initially get, you've done so much with him, how did you initially get hooked up with Gary? Did you just get assigned to something, or had you guys already talked to each other?
No, I can't remember what we did first. Might have been, was it Superman Secret Origins? Our first project, or maybe I did some covers for him or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, if anyone listening can't understand why you don't remember some of these early things, people should be aware that you've been working at DC for in the area of 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been almost 22 years.
Yeah, you're not new to this.
Oh no, guys, I name a character, I probably worked on it. bunch of Marvel stuff. I've done like, oh man, I've done stuff for the Navy SEALs actually with Zach Howard. We did a big troop flag, and which is pretty cool. So they sent me a Navy SEAL coin and stuff, and it was really neat.
Wow.
Yeah, like I can't remember. It might have been Superman Secret Origins, the first one. Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of did a lot of time. My approach is I like to follow the artist's lead. Depending on, actually, I did an Aliens run. It's a good example. I did an Aliens run with Zach Howard. I don't know if it was 2 issues or something years ago, and he's got a really, kind of stark, cartoony style, I guess. Lots of heavy black and stuff. So there was a profile of one character, and I kind of painted in his cheekbone and did some lighting from an office desk. And he sent me an email. He was like, "Oh my God, this looks so awesome." He says, "You're the first colorist that actually painted in cheekbones." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, I guess." But I didn't even realize that was a thing. Like I just thought, oh, this is what I do. And but I didn't realize that, a lot of colorists wouldn't do that, I guess. Yeah, but there's been so many things. Like, so I try to do same with Gary and Jason. I don't try to get too carried away with it. I do have a tendency to over render sometimes when I'm so geared up with the project. I'm super pumped, and I might over render the whole back.
And maybe if you end up having more time than usual to work on a particular book, like I'm sure you had somewhere around the same length of time that Jay had working on the first issue of Three Jokers.
As far as covers always take extra longer to do. Interiors, yeah. I mean, I've always had. I mean, there was at one point I was doing. Well, I think there was 4 books in 1 month. There was a couple of projects overlapping, and I was doing 4 books in the 1 month, and it was crazy. Like, and then Darkseid War, that was insane.
Yeah, that really seemed like a demanding one. I know by the end of that, Jay was feeling pretty fatigued, so you must have been very much in the same boat.
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy. And we were talking. He's like, "Hey, are we going to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, just send me the stuff and I'll bang it out. I don't care how long it takes. Let's just do it." Because we wanted to have we wanted to keep it consistent throughout and not kind of chop it up or split off some of the stuff or have a different artist and colorist finishing it off. So he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I said, "Well, if you do it, then I'll have your back and we can just bang it out." But it was a lot of long days. But anyways, Jay was drawing so much, and there was just, oh my God, it was just insane. It was so insane. I would just look at these big double page spreads, like, the battle scenes and everything else. I just almost started crying. I was like, oh my God. And I had to do, literally, I had to get 4 pages per day on some of that stuff.
Holy.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of hours, a lot of work.
What would you say is your usual when you're just working at a more comfortable pace? How many pages a day are you putting out?
Well, maybe, a good full day is probably 3 pages. Yeah. Depending on the art, depending on this and that. Like, Doomsday Clock towards the end there, it was getting down to the wire, and as you know, it was getting a little bit delayed. So, and as we're getting pages in, I think I did about 5 pages sometimes per day on that.
Holy.
Which was a lot. Like that is a lot. Like I would start at 6 a.m. and I'd be done at probably 6 or 7 in the evening. And but. So, I mean, you do that for certain projects for sure, right?
So with a project like that where it was kind of getting delayed and strung out like that, did you ever at any time kind of have to go back to like maybe issue 1 or 2 and kind of use those as references so that you maintain consistency?
Yeah, I always have previous pages kind of up. So I'm always referring back to. And that's another thing I would always, even when I'm on issue 11, so, I'll go back, I'll grab some pages in issue 1, I'll open them up on the side on my Photoshop there, and I'll just have them there just so I know, okay, well, it has to stay, issue 12 has to look like issue 1 as far as I'm concerned, right? Yeah. So yeah, definitely always refer back and do that. Especially with a book like that, because, like there's someone might, if it gets put together in one collected series, well, you don't want to notice like any, and Gary, like, oh my God, like you couldn't tell. You think he drew issue 12 first, like he's so consistent and so good. So I try to maintain the same quality. Hopefully it looked that way, but yeah.
So with the volume of work that you talked about, how much work Jay was putting in on a Darkseid War, but obviously that means you were doing the same. But when Darkseid War, I don't know how much you pay attention to the fan reception, what people are talking about things. But when Darkseid War was coming out, that was the thing that people were talking about. It was super popular, and it was great, and that's what everyone was waiting for. That every week people were waiting for, every month people were waiting for the next issue of Darkseid War. And as big as that was, I don't think anyone expected that it was opening the doors for something that would be even bigger a few years later with how massive Three Jokers is right now.
Oh, I know. And the funny thing is, like, I wasn't on any social media when Darkseid War came out. Like, I wasn't on Twitter, nothing. And I'm just sitting, in my office. I'm just plugging away, just doing my job. And I do, an issue of Darkseid War. Then I jump on something else. And I had a list of deadlines I had to meet, and I was just kind of plugging away. And then Geoff and I think Brian Cunningham at the time, he's like, you got to get on, like, how come you're not on Twitter? Like, you're getting. So then I signed up. I signed up after, and people have been so nice. But yeah, I know I had no idea at the time. And as far as it leading into, what we're working on, what we worked on now, no, I had no idea. Yeah.
Now, obviously, both are a pretty big workload, but they're both very different styles. You talked about the big, like, 2-page spreads that Jay was giving you in Darkseid War, but Three Jokers now is predominantly the 9-panel grids. Do you have any preference on which way you're doing, and is one easier to deal with the volume on the schedule you've got?
No, it's not. I don't mind 9-panel grid or the big. Sometimes I like. Actually, I just finished a big double-page spread for this project I'm working on, which I can't say yet. Which gives me an opportunity to do some big, atmospheric perspective and, put some massive drop shadows, for instance, that kind of thing. 9-panel grid. The one thing I found difficult with the 9-panel grid when I was working on Doomsday Clock was you had 3 or 4 different locations in one page. So I'm like, oh man, okay, well. So I'm constantly thinking ahead, like down, way into the book. Okay, well, I have to do this kind of color scheme for this scene because I know it's going to show up later, and I want to make sure it looks like this. And then sometimes they converge on one page, and the colors might clash a bit. And I'm like, oh man, so I have to really push myself and alter it. And that was kind of the biggest thing that was tough for me. Yeah, so you just have to keep that in mind. So if I'm setting up a scene, you might only be one panel of a 9-panel grid on one page. but that scene's going to continue later on in the issue. So I have to make sure it works on one page and also for a second. So when you turn the page, you know you're in a different location, different time. So yeah, I just really got to keep that in mind. But yeah,
we talked about the way that you use the lighting and things like that. Does it change the way that you have to think about the lighting if you're working on something like big splash pages or just larger panels where you have space to establish the lighting coming in from either direction or multiple directions? Do you get more space or easier ability to do that than you do working on like the 9-panel grids where there's less space in each frame?
Well, no, I mean the 9-panel grid stuff, it's more of me separating. Well, it depends if it's all one, if it's in the same location on a 9-panel grid, like on the same page. Then you kind of just set it up. When you have it spread out like on a splash page or something, then I could always add, I could do the whole scene in one color, and then I could, in my mind, I'm always like, oh, what if there's like a, like a stop sign or like a red light or like a something going on the off scene, so I could throw in like a side light just to kind of frame some images or frame some people, or I could put a lens flare in or something like that. There's a little more freedom, I think. But more so for covers, for instance, Mm-hmm. But yeah, like for the 3 Joker covers, like there's that kind of the pinkish blue, that pinkish purple light coming off the side.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know, like it doesn't appear anywhere. It's just an element for just to kind of frame the people, like the faces. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it really matters it depends on the story too, right?
Yeah.
So.
Those 3 Joker covers were one of the specific examples that Jay was using when he talked about how well you use the lighting, that you don't just flatten areas, you'll use that rim lighting and things like that. The covers were what he specifically talked about, and I couldn't believe how quick you guys get those out. I was talking about this when Jay was on the last time. When it was announced that the first issue was going to second print, and he got the green light to do a new cover for it. He sent me his rough sketch of it. I think it was either on a Wednesday or Thursday. He sent me just the rough sketch, and then it was less than 2 days later. It might have been like a day and a half that he sent me the final that you had already colored. You guys got through that ridiculously fast.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, Jay is super fast too. He's like, he'll send me an email, says, "Okay, expect to cover for the second print," or the editor, Amadeo, will send out an email saying, "Okay, we got to work on the cover for the second print." And literally, oh man, I don't even know. The next day for sure, Jay will have like 3 ideas sketched out, and we kind of pick one, and it was the shark puppet one.
Yeah,
that's one. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's super cool because it's be perfect for issue 1, right? And so he sent, I think the next day he sent me the inks, and I kind of just dropped everything and I did it right away and sent it back to him. Yeah, that one only took me, a couple hours, 3 hours to do maybe. So, well, and you got to realize I've done like how many of those similar covers.
Yeah, I guess you kind of get that down, yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of went and, yeah. That's kind of a special case because, like I said, I just did about freaking 15 of those covers.
I hope that you end up doing more because I'm I can't reveal any of the secrets, but the ideas that Jay's batting around, like if issue 1 gets to a third print, what the other cover would be, and if 2 and 3 get to second prints, what the second print covers would be. And so there's some really cool stuff that's possible if we see that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, yeah, he's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys.
And he has the ideas really mapped out for how he wants to handle. Like there's or sort of almost an equation for what the second print cover will be, and then what the third print, if it comes to that, will be, and it's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll be down for it. That's for sure. Let's hope we get to do that. That'd be awesome.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, were you involved in the decision making for what the I forget what he called it, third color or fourth color or something for the variant covers, the 1 in 25s, I think it was, the ones that are the really extreme, like the pink and the purple and green.
Oh no. Yeah, no, I didn't do those. I didn't really say. Yeah, that had nothing to do with me really. So yeah. Yeah, they look pretty cool though. I like.
Yeah, crazy idea. When you first see that online, like, oh, really? That.
But the way so cool on the shelf too, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very extreme choice, but it works so well. Like I wouldn't have expected it to look that good if someone said, "Oh yeah, it's going to be the same image, but it's going to be all purple and green."
Yeah, I love those.
You mentioned that you had an interest in like doing film storyboards and stuff like that. Do you have or is there a movie that you've seen that you noticed, the lighting and the coloring that they use in the movie and thought, I'd like to apply that technique or that to a book I'm working on?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like I just wish I could remember, like when I'm watching a movie or something, I'm like, oh my God, I got to remember that. That's so awesome. And then I'll totally forget. And I just kind of go. But good ones like right now is all the John Wick stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
The way they use, oh man, it's so awesome. I did a cover for it's a Deathstroke cover that Lee Weeks and I did, and it was a spotlight on. It's kind of a down shot, so I did kind of like a whitish light, but it had like its blue, teal, green color around him. And then I think the following week I saw John Wick. I can't remember which John Wick 2, I think, where he's running in the basement and there's all this blue light and it's hiding all the guns. And it was the exact same lighting that I used for that cover. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. So I talked to Lee. I said, oh, did you see that? Have you seen John Wick? I said, you got to watch it. It's the same lighting. So yeah, that kind of stuff.
I think I'm looking at the one you're talking about right now. He has his mask off and he's like, it's on the floor behind him and he's in the middle of the spotlight. Yeah. His guns and blades are all on the floor. Yeah.
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 So I just kind of used that, and then I saw it in that John Wick, and I was like, or even, there's tons of movies. It's crazy. Blade Runner, the whole scenes like in the latest Blade Runner, where I kind of look at that too, where they show a cityscape or the desert scenes, or even some of the pictures you see in the news about the fires in LA and that kind of stuff. I kind of look at those. I think, wow, I'd like to use that in like a scene maybe somewhere or something. And the nice thing about being a colorist now is you have Google Images, so you could just quickly search up desert at night scene or something like that, and you can kind of play off that kind of stuff. And didn't have that years ago when I was starting. So
yeah, I mean your field has changed drastically, from the time that you began till now.
Oh my God, yeah, big time. Like I remember using Photoshop where you would have to wait. You'd make a brushstroke and then you have to sit there and wait for it to load.
Oh, jeez.
Or you make a gradation and then you got to sit there and kind of wait a few seconds for it to actually to load your app, like what you did. Oh, it was brutal. And lots of crashes, and you lost so much work, and it just sucked. And you see these guys now that are, they're drawing. They've only drawn. They've never really drawn on paper. They've only drawn on a Cintiq kind of thing. And yeah.
And all those screens that guys use now have gotten so big.
Oh, yeah.
Like the one that Jay's got in his office is huge, and Todd McFarlane posts a lot of videos where he shows himself drawing in his office, and it's like he's drawing on a flat screen TV.
Well, that's exactly it too. Yeah, it's super nice though. Like you never go back. Like,
is that what you use? Like,
yeah, I use a tablet and my Macintosh stuff with the big. It's a 32-inch one, so.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's it's nice. It's bright, and I like seeing the finished books online too. Like when I see stuff on social media or something where they post pages, like, oh, that looks awesome. It looks exactly like how I did it. And then sometimes you see in print, like some of the Three Joker stuff, it went a little darker than I thought, but then I see it online, I'm like, oh, it looks really good. So it's a tough balance for me. Like I really watch my numbers, my CMYK, because I work in CMYK color mode.
Right.
So I really watch my numbers. I don't use any black in my mix, 0 black. So I just use the color, just so it doesn't get too muddy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that. So
sometimes when I see an issue that pages have a lot of dialogue, so there are a lot of speech bubbles. Sometimes I just look at them and wonder. I wonder if either the penciler or the inker, if there's an inker or the colorist, looks at the final issue once the lettering is added and think, man, I colored the crap out of that tree in the background, and it's covered with a speech bubble.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That happens all the time.
Damn.
Yeah, like that happened a lot. Like the dialogue in Doomsday Clock was super heavy. So yeah, which I mean, it is what it is, right? So, but I do it regardless. There's one I was doing Detective Comics. With Alvaro, and we were doing there's one panel. Batgirl was in the panel, and she was doing, or I rendered her cape, and there's like a city light on her cape, and I thought, oh man, I love this portion of the cape. Like I just underlighting, and I made it look super slick, like some pretty cool highlights on it, and I was like pretty jazzed about it. And I get the issue, and they put a word balloon right over her cape. Like, dang it! So I posted that panel without the word balloons. Like I actually found the page and I posted on my Instagram or on my social media, whatever, Twitter, and and I put it in there. Oh, this is minus the word balloons and everything else. So yeah, and then I think Chris Conroy was the editor at the time, and he replied, "Oh, sorry." Editorial something. It was pretty funny, but that happens a lot. Like it's pretty frustrating, but
and it is nice to see the stuff without them. I don't know that we'll ever see this again, but for a while before the recent changes in the publishing stuff with DC, there was a point where they were releasing a few different formats. Like we were getting the regular versions of comics, they were doing the unwrapped hardcovers, which were story arcs, etc., that were just the pencils. They were doing the noirs that were just the inks. And they did a couple times. We've seen before Batman Damned came out, there was that advanced copy of book 1 that they sent out to shops that is the fully colored issue, complete book 1, full colored, but there are no speech bubbles in it. And I would love to see books like Three Jokers, Doomsday Clock, get editions like that, like a complete collected edition, especially if it was at like a deluxe size or an absolute edition size, with none of the speech bubbles, so we could just see those complete art pages.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
I would buy those for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of post. I did a bunch of spreads with Alvaro Martinez on, I think it was on Detective, and then Justice League Dark. I mean, it's beautiful. There's tons of double page spreads. So I was archiving a bunch of my, like, taking them off my machine. I was putting them on an external hard drive, and get tons of, like, I have so many issues just on one. So I try to keep my files down, and I'm going through them like, oh, these are awesome. So I posted a bunch of them before, maybe last year, without the word balloons and that kind of thing, just so you can see kind of what it looks like and how I'll get this massive, just like a black and white image. And it's like, oh man, I sit back and look and go, how am I going to handle this? Because panels bleed into panels, and then there's a last silhouette image that kind of, there's no background, and it bleeds into the other panels in the top. So I kind of have to really figure out what I'm going to do and how to separate everything. And yeah, so I wanted people to see kind of what it looks like without the word balloons.
Okay, be honest. In your extended career, and you don't have to drop names, but have you ever gotten like some pages or a book where you're like, shit, I got to rescue this because it's bad?
Well, not bad. It's just like, I'm a massive comic book art fan. Always have. That's why I got into comics. Like, I just, like, I mean, I used to look at, like, Stan Drake, the Kelly Green stuff. Yeah, like Colin Wilson stuff, it just blows my mind. Yeah, like John Romita Jr. stuff I see, I'm like, oh, it's pretty cool. Like, all this kind of different art. Like, that's why I like comic book art, because there's so many different takes on, like, the same kind of, like, let's say Superman. So there's a few issues where we got, and it was a lot of gray tone, a lot of, like, it looked really cool, but it was a nightmare to color. Like, it's super hard to do, like, ink wash stuff and that kind of thing. For me to make it, you have to put a trap color underneath, and it's got to be made for printing. But then I have to keep the colors bright. But meanwhile, there's an ink wash over the colors, so when it prints, it's going to be, you're risking it getting too dark and muddy. It's just, it's so tough to really keep everything separate and make sure that it prints in a high quality. Oh, it's super frustrating that way. There's times where I see it in print and I shake my head and I don't even want to look at it.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. How often are you disappointed with how things print out? Because I've seen guys say, oftentimes about cover art or things that they've done that, oh, I really love the way this printed out, or
oh yeah,
not so much.
Yeah.
Little techniques like that, I mean, just show how far comics have come in even just the last 10 years.
Oh, I know. Like, it looks, some of the stuff, it looks so good. Like George Jimenez.
Yeah.
So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I just love looking. The stuff he does is so fun to look at. You know what I mean? Like, it's, yeah, I just love it.
The amount of technology that is available now, not only for the printing, but also for just the creation of art. So many guys are doing digital now that it really changes the quality level that we end up seeing in the final product. And it's got to be easier in so many ways. There's no more obviously shipping out pages or anything like that, or just the things that can happen to pages. I don't know if you guys have heard David Finch's story years ago when he was working on when he was doing Avengers when he was at Marvel. And he was right at the end of a deadline. He finished the issue, on the final day, and he sort of laid out all the issues just to have, one last look over them before he packed them up to take them to FedEx or whatever. And he knocked over a coffee, and it spilled across some of the pages. Shit. So I've got like 10 hours where I can either redo these pages that have coffee across half the pages, or I can just soak the rest of the pages in coffee and submit them with a sepia tone.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. You know what? I don't even like to think about that stuff. Like, I've had, my computer crash or the power goes out or something, and I lose a bunch of work, and it's a lot different.
I can't imagine having that to worry about. Like, I get nervous if my PS4 didn't get turned off properly, and when I turn it on, it's going through where it's scanning the disc, and it says it tells you that it's scanning the disc and don't turn it off while it's doing this. Like, man, it's raining outside if the power goes out right now.
Well, and I always have a coffee, because I'll start at maybe 6 in the morning. So I always have a coffee or something next to me. So every time I grab it, I pause. I'm like, okay, I'm grabbing my coffee. I focus what I'm doing, because I don't want it to dump on my keyboard. You know what I mean? Like, it could be disastrous, especially when you have a deadline. So, like, at the end of Three Jokers, I think it was almost 1 in the morning or something. We're doing final touches on it, and you don't even want to think about it. It's like saying shutout before a hockey game's over. You don't want to do anything like that. Like, it's
and you don't have this danger doing digitally. You're saved from this, but I think it was Dustin that was saying, Dustin Nguyen was talking about the number of times that he has accidentally grabbed his brush cup, that he rinses his brushes in, thinking that it was his coffee cup, and takes a sip out of that.
Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, in school, like, you'd be up most of the night working on projects, and we take inking classes and all kinds of it was crazy. So, and you would do that because you'd be up all night, and you just kind of
maybe not even notice what you drank.
No, you don't. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, that was one thing about the Kubert school too, is you got taught by working pros too. So which was really good. So I got to meet Andy there, and that was pretty cool. At the time, I was like, oh my god, while he was working on X-Men, and I got to see some Adam stuff, and I remember, I think at the time, Joe Kubert came out with the Facts from Sarajevo. I think that was my second year at the school, and I was like, oh man, I gotta buy it. So I bought it, and so I kind of went in the office and said, I'd like to make an appointment with Joe. I want to get him to sign my book for me. And like, okay. So they set me up with a time. So I remember going in his office, and he had this big, long kind of banquet table, and then on the one wall was like his drawing table and it was huge. Like, it was a massive drafting table. He would have his, little homemade little shelves that he would tape onto it. And it was like, must have been 1,000 ink brushes. It was just insane. Like, I loved it so much. And we'd sat down, and he drew a little picture in the book and signed it. And we talked comics and stuff. And it was so inspiring. I will never forget it. And he was just such a cool guy that way. And I was super fortunate to, like, not many guys can say that you sat in Joe Kubert's studio and just kind of bullshitted comics with him. And that to me was a huge deal. So when I got to work on a Batman project with him and Andy, and I got to do the Before the Watchmen, did the Night Owl stuff. So Andy and Joe signed one of those center posters, like it was a centerfold poster that came with it. Yeah. So, and Andy says, it's the only one that Joe's ever signed. So I have it in my studio here.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he sent me an original page from the issue, and Joe and him signed it. So it was super cool guy, but so inspiring. Like, I'll never forget that. It was so cool.
It's cool the number of artists that do make that opportunity for other artists to learn from. Like the number of guys that do classes. Klaus Janson does classes.
Yeah.
David Mazzucchelli, he doesn't even. I don't think he even has done comics in years, but he's a teacher now. That would be very cool to learn from him.
Yeah, that was kind of. I mean, and the guys like I said, I was going to school with like Damien Scott at the time, and he would sit there, and he'd have his drawing board like on his lap, and he'd be sitting there, and he would be drawing Spider-Man, and he was like legit amazing when he first came to the school. I'm like, what are you doing? Like what? Like, so he was working like the day he left the school. He got like I think Batgirl, signed a contract with DC right away, and yeah, he's a good dude. But yeah, and then I had another Canadian guy. We were living in the same house, and he went into I think after your second year, you had to choose. No, I think it was after your first year. You had to choose if you wanted to go into animation or if you wanted to go into comic book or narrative art. And he went into animation. I think he's a director for American Dad right now, and he's worked on The Simpsons, and he does all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so he's been doing it for a long time.
That's very cool.
And yeah, so I got a few buddies. One guy's a filmmaker in Oslo. He makes movies. Yeah, it's amazing. Everyone kind of branches off and does their own thing, kind of thing. But it's a really good foundation, and you meet some just amazing artists, and it just pushes you to do good. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Hey, Gramps, you want to fire us up a lightning round?
Sure.
Uh-oh.
So the lightning round, you don't have to so much. The lightning round is we'll just sort of throw some silly questions at you, just things about yourself, just people can get to know you.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, who's your favorite Anderson?
Favorite Anderson? Oh, man.
Well, we asked Chip Zdarsky what his favorite kind of chip was, so we got to ask you who your favorite Anderson is.
Well, I know that Brad Anderson, I used to draw Marmaduke. Growing up, there was always that kind of thing, that kind of connection. But and I always get a lot of that Mr. Anderson from The Matrix.
Yeah.
I mean, that never gets old. So I would say that one. Mr. Anderson, yeah.
What do you like to do, in your spare time as a hobby? When you're not just staring at a computer screen all day.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I do. We have a good sized property, so I like to spend a lot of time outside. The balance between I spend X amount of hours in front of a computer while I want to spend an X amount of hours outside. So I, cut a lot of grass and, build stuff outside, work in the garden, stuff like that. Have, big fires, that kind of stuff in the back. I got a big pile of brush I got to burn, and then I'll rototill it in the garden. I just like to get out, do some fishing, that kind of stuff. But,
see, talented artists like yourself, you guys see the world differently than just the average Joes like us. I imagine when you're burning a fire, you're thinking about the rendering of that fire, aren't you?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I've taken a lot of pictures. Like a lot of times, if we have, I'll let it get down, then I'll hammer it with a stick, and then I'll take a picture of all the sparks that go up, and then I'll use those in a page or something. Actually, I might have used some, and I did a Batman cover with Andy, and Batman's on this kind of a rock ledge, and there's like lava and the flames coming up. But I think the sparks I used was actually from a photo I took from my. Now what I do is I will load that photo. I'll make a channel of it, like a black and white channel. Then I'll load that selection and I'll paint into it, however, manipulate it that way. I don't just dump in a photo of it.
Yeah.
I use that and I'll convert it to like black and white, and then I'll kind of render it in. Yeah, so I do that. I do that lots.
You ever do that with like action figures and set them up and do weird lighting things to see, how do I render this shit?
Well, no,
you're a professional. You're not an amateur like me.
No, but like I said, Google Images is,
Yeah.
you know, you can get whatever you want on there as far as lighting and that kind of stuff. But, and I follow a lot of artists, you know, on Twitter and that kind of stuff, like concept artists, and there's so many good people out there. It's like, it just blows my mind.
What is your favorite Alice in Chains song?
Oh, Alice in Chains.
And I just picked them at random. I just figured you're an awesome dude. You probably like Alice in Chains.
Yeah. Jar of Flies? Yeah, I don't know. I'm so bad with song names. I just listen to music all day. I'm super into Tool right now for some reason.
Cool.
I don't know why. Yeah, but I listen to everything. Like, if I'm working in the garage, like I have to change oil in my truck this weekend, so I play country music in my garage. When I'm working out, I listen to like heavy stuff, like a heavy playlist on Apple iTunes, and then like I got tons of different like, you know, I could put techno on or something if if I have a super tight deadline. I swear I listened to a lot of Euro tech music when I was working on Darkseid War for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How much do you deadlift?
Deadlift. Oh, well, I'm 40. What am I? 48 years old now. I don't go over 225. That's pretty much my max. But I try to get 2 plates.
Reps. It's all about reps.
Well, no, it's all about hips. You mean? Like, I don't.
That's true.
I want to be able to walk the next day, but no, I try to get in the gym almost every day if I could. So, yeah.
I've got one I like to throw in. What is the best advice you have ever been given, and who gave it to you?
I think it was Joe Kubert told me, and I think Andy was in the room too. He said, "You want to bring something to the table," and I will never ever forget that. So when I putting out a comic is a giant team effort, from concept writer to letterer, and you want to bring something to the table. So I always keep that in the back of my head.
So I have
So if I do a page, like Fabok will send me a page, and when I send him a JPEG of the colored page, I want him to be like, "Wow, this is awesome." And so that's me just trying to bring something to the table. So you have a guy, Gary Frank, Geoff Johns, and then I don't want to just muck up throw anything down. So I want to make sure that I'm bringing something to the table too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it.
So you're the first person I'm going to ask this question to. What is your most embarrassing moment?
Oh my God.
I'll tell you mine. I'll tell you mine if that loosens you up.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. My most embarrassing moment. I don't know if I could say. My buddy, no, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I don't really know what it is. That's a tough question. Jeez.
We ask the hard hitting stuff.
Oh, I know.
We're real professional journalists here.
Yeah, I got a good one. So, I think my wife and I, we were just before we were married. and I went to her town. First time I met her friends, and everything, it was a Halloween social, it's called, right? So it was a big kind of Halloween dance kind of thing, and her friends thought it'd be funny for me to dress up as a cheerleader for this social. So I, had a couple drinks and whatever, and at one point she's like, "Oh, where's Brad?" And then her friend's like, "Oh, he's up there," and I'm up on the speaker on the stage dancing in a cheerleader costume. So I think that was probably my most embarrassing moment. Yeah, she was like, "Oh, that's my boyfriend." Yeah.
Well, as long as there was some good lighting on you, then it was worth it.
Oh yeah, she's, I don't know. But yeah, we've been together 27 years now, so it must have worked. Must have had nice legs or something.
You must have had the right moves, man.
Yeah, I guess so.
I was waiting for you to say they told you to dress up as a cheerleader, and then you went there and it was like a semi-formal or something like this.
No one else was dressed up.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Well, might as well have been. Jeez. Yeah, I felt pretty. I was pretty embarrassed the next day for sure. But.
Maybe for an anniversary or something, you pull out the old costume again for her.
Oh no, I don't think so. No, those days are long gone.
So with Halloween around the corner, are you the type of guy that buys the full candy bars or just goes on the little small ones?
Oh no, we do full candy bars, full cans of
right
pop.
On.
We do. I even have shots of Fireball for the parents.
That's cool.
Yeah, no. Like we live out, we don't get too many kids. We're kind of out in the country. Like I'm just outside of Winnipeg, almost at the Ontario border. So we have like 6 acres or something. So there's kind of a country feel. So a lot of guys will come with like a big trailer, they have their quad pulling a trailer full of kids or that kind of thing. So you get tons of kids at once. And like one year, we might get a few kids, like maybe 11 kids. And the next year we might get 20, 25 kids. So I know pretty much all the people that come to the house. So it's always nice to have like, give them a shot of whiskey or shot of Fireball or something. So
as they're driving kids.
Yeah, I love Halloween. So normally, I used to take the kids out and I would pull them on a trailer, same thing. And then my wife would stay home. And then once my kids started getting older, then they'd want to go do their own thing with their friends. So my wife would take them and then I would stay home and I'd put on, always watch like a Friday the 13th movie or a current horror movie, that kind of thing. And yeah, I love that. I love Halloween.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, I think that's everything I've got.
Cool.
Awesome.
Jeez, perfect.
Well, maybe we can let Brad get back to life here then. We took up a good chunk of your day here, but we do really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So right now we're looking forward to what next week is the finale of Three Jokers. And we can also look forward to Volume 3 of Batman Earth 1 from Geoff Johns, Gary Frank, and yourself.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. I'm not sure. I'll try to get moving on it for you, but it's a big book. So there's a few projects coming up. I got about 3 pretty cool ones you'll be pumped about that I can't say yet, but
you tease.
Yeah, it should be pretty awesome. But thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
I appreciate it. It's nice to know that you guys are actually noticing some color work and how many hours these guys put in. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the colors too, but I think there is a definite change happening lately, and maybe social media has something to do with that, where more people are noticing and crediting not just the colorist, but the inker, the letterer, and people are even knowing what editors they like handling books. So there's a lot more awareness of the team effort that books are. So that's cool to see.
Yeah, and that's an awesome thing about working with Geoff and Jay too, is like Geoff has been so awesome. Like he says, no, your name's got to be on Doomsday Clock. Like you are, this is it. You're part of this. It's the whole team kind of thing. And yeah, he's awesome. He's basically just, here you go. and he'll phone me, and we'll talk about stuff, and it's pretty nice to have the writer, discuss stuff with the colorist and that. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Really good guys too.
And it's working. You guys are doing great stuff, and we do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You bet.
We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye.